been there. We know we have an idea. We want to build an Android application or web application for our different users to fit our need or maybe fit somebody in need. But you are an indie developer or you might do not have any idea how to build an application. So in this video, I'm going to show you my thought, show you the thought process, how I built an application from scratch, how I have a problem. I had a problem, how do I solve it, how do I make difficult choices, how do I switch from one backend to another backend depending upon the situation, and all of the complicated choices. You might go on YouTube, you might search on different websites, but you know each component, how each component works, but you're not familiar with how they are put together into one unified experience. So today I'm going to show you how to put them and show you my journey, how I built the application for my need, for my problems, and I hope you guys can learn along the way that how to build an stunning application from scratch. So before we begin, let me show you about this blog post that I wrote not too long ago. So in this blog post, I will link the blog post in the description. So the blog post will go from idea to code, my build story. So in this blog post, I'm going through every single step, every single decision that I made while I was building the application. So let's just go through. You can read this blog post, the flow of the application work, which platform to choose, and how things will cohese into one single UI. So before we begin and deep dive into that, let me explain you the problem that I was having. So if you don't know, I wrote all my notes on my website. I'm currently pursuing my master's degree, and I wrote all of my notes on my website. I used Markdown, MDX, and during my class, I wrote down everything. Then I sent that note to my GitHub repo, where it is built and then deployed to the internet. But there's a catch to it. You cannot access your notes on daily basis because it is really difficult to access your notes on daily basis without a proper internet connection or open browser. Go to my URL and then search for the note and then open the note, then read the note, and it's a real hassle to me to do all these steps. So what I did when I was building the application, I built also different APIs for these applications. So let me show you these. Let me show you first of all the APIs that I built for this website, so you guys understand where the data is coming from. So this is my website. This is my website code base, and if you go to pages/APIs, and if you go to MS Notes, so what this is doing, I'm using basically Astro, and Astro is a new feature that's known as content layer. So what this API is doing at build time, it is getting that content layer called MS Notes and passing through it in a JSON particular format and deploying it to the internet. So if I go to localhost, for example, or you go to Roughnet 9. So if you go to localhost/API/MS Nodes, you can see, and I prettified this, you can see all of my blog post data, all of the notes jam-packed with information. So what I did that I'm just passing information from one point to an API to another point. So that was the core principle for me. So the idea, I have explained you the idea, but before you have the idea already, but what features you're looking for. Features are the functionalities of your application that you are wanted to develop or your user want to experience. So for me, the feature set were very easy. I need to have an online and offline access. So even I don't have internet connection, I can access the application. It need to have some kind of authentication system so that user can log in, log out, and no bots can access the system. It need to have some color scheming. I like having colors. It's the core. It's one of the features that I like. Sometimes I like it read in dark mode, sometimes in light mode, and depending upon different theme of the application, it's all up to your choices. And the third point is that I love note taking. I hate Google Keep. I know it's the default standard, but I want to create something my own, and I want to add similar features of Google Keep, but keep it local to me and my needs. So once you have finalized your features, then you need to decide what kind of tech stack you're going to go with. So depending upon YouTube, watching videos upon Reddit, there are a lot of tech stack out there. that include from Flutter to React Native to Android to Java to Kotlin. All of these platforms, there are so many, and once you're deep in one framework, you cannot move to another, or it is very hard. So I basically learned Flutter, and it was very easy for me, but I wanted to try React Native, so I built an application using React Native, and it was really hard. It's really tough if you need to choose a framework very carefully. You cannot flip flop between 2 to 3 frameworks. That is very important thing. Once you have finalized your framework, then you need to decide what kind of backend you're looking for. Since my application have an authentication system, have a notification system, has a background processes, you need to sync your nodes from your database to your user. So if one user sign out from an account and sign into another device, all of his nodes can be synced from one device to another device. That is the power of sync. So for me, there are several choices when it comes to backend. So there was the from Firebase is one of the standards for backend. There is the newcomer that is known as AppWrite. There is the built and true highly motivated open source version known as Superbase, and there is the starter that is self-hostable that is known as Pocketbase. Now all of these have their own pros and cons. They have the same functionality. They provide authentication, they provide databases, they provide storage for you, but they have different SDKs, different ways to code their environment. So for example, Firebase have their own SDK that you just import a function, you pass that, call that function, pass the parameters, and that will take care of the rest. Whereas AppWrite has a little more integrated system. They use their API system. You have their API key and their endpoint key. You can check out their docs as well. So every time you create a user, log into the system, you hit that API with that endpoint, uh, and that will let you create an account, or user can authenticate. Superbase is very similar to AppWrite. They have their own URL, and they have their own database key. But Superbase is a mix combo of Firebase and AppWrite. They don't have their endpoints. They use SDK plus APIs point. So once you have declared the API, they have their SDKs in their Flutter application. When you pass the API key and you call that function, and it will take care of the authentication, creating user, and all that stuff. And you have other competitor that is known as Pocketbase. Now Pocketbase is pretty cool. It's a self-hostable, it's a one file host all. They have SDKs for you, but they don't have any cloud service. They give you the code yourself. You have to deploy your own. So deploying your own open source backend is a little bit more painful as compared to other three options. There are other, for example, I heard of one more that is known as Convex. Convex is the database backend. So if you're going with React Native or React, then this is the backend, the best. They're hands down. There is no right wrong answer. The best backend service for React and React Native has to be Convex. Firebase and Superbase are great, but Convex is the king. So once you have decided what kind of backend you are going, so I wrote a blog post not too long ago comparing these services as well. So once you have decided what your tech stack is going to be, let's talk about what tech stack I got with. So my choice was Flutter for UI and AppWrite for backend. Now I have wrote a lot of application using Flutter, but not in AppWrite. I'm quite new to AppWrite, and I did not know how things will flow out. So I was going with backend. So my choice was pretty simple. So once you had decided what kind of um, technology you're going to use, you need to understand and you need to know the flow of your application. By far the most important thing ever, trust me on this. Because if you don't know how the flow of your application will work, you will not know how to build an application. You need to identify how the authentication system, the auth will work. You install the application, which screen user first see, which will screen second once he's log in. If he's successful, if the login is good, where he will go. If the login failed, where will he go? If the user need to register his account, which screen to show first. After that, the flow of the application. Without this, you cannot do it anywhere. So for me, the login flows was something like this, the registration flows was something like this, the authentication gate. So if you don't know what authentication gate is, basically authentication gate is like, once you have logged into your application, you don't have to re-log in into your application. It will create a session for you. It will remember that, oh, this user has logged into my application. I need to save its keys, its user authentication on their local device. Once that is stored, every time you open the application, application will know, I know this is the user. I will let you in the application. Without authentication gate, user has to log in every single time, and trust me, it is painful. Like every time user have to enter its email and password and then log in, and then the whole process, it's a nightmare. So have an authentication gate. For authentication gate for user logged in and to user who are not logged into the system, both cases need to be handled. So that's the authentication flows for me. So the next feature for me was node fetching. How I will fetch the nodes from my website, these nodes. So for me, before I can fetch the call, I need to make sure that I need to have internet connection. If the application is open, internet is connected, I'm going to call the API, get the data, store it somewhere. Now, this can be very different depending upon your need. Sometimes you need to store the data into a backend service, for example Firebase or AppWrite or anywhere, or you can store it locally. So for me, because I wanted offline features, I went with local databases. So I stored in the local database, showed that data to the users, and if app is not opened, there is no internet connection, switch to offline mode. And if a user switch to offline mode, and if there is no data, I did add this, if there is no data, then show the user no data is present. So this will only work. So a user is required to have one time internet connection to fetch all these nodes to their host application. Without this, you will not see any kind of node. So the third feature was note taking. How user will create notes. Well, I have different thought, different process, different feature set that I want to explore on different application. So user will open the application. At this point, I'm considering that he is already logged in. He will open the tab for note taking UI. He will create a note. He will write some content. He will save the content. Simple. I know the flows. I know how things will go, and that's why I created this. If you're unsure, use a pen and paper to make sure that those flows are correct. If those flows are not correct, you will miss out on core features and you will fumble upon everything. So with all that flows, all that documentation in your mind or in a paper as well, not too long ago, I was using for example, I was using this notepad to, if you can see, I was using the notepad to write all of my notes, all of my flows, all of this thing before I had this application. Now it's time to code the application. Now you know everything, you have the mental image of the application, how it's going to look like. So now I will set up my application, and I did a lot of googling, see how the UI is going to look, and I started to build the application. So here's my experience as well. So as the very first day, let's just switch to GitHub, and I'm going to show you the entire code base that I did. So this is the entire code base. It's all open source. You can check it out. I even leave a lot of documentation for you guys so that you guys can, if you guys want to fork it and learn from your own code base. We're going to see how the apps works in the near future. So let's just open the pull request section, and let's just go to the pull request number 1. As you can see, I'm on Vue version 7. So I built this application in an entire week, but I was not at version 7. I was at version 1. But now, with some time has passed, I have bump it up to version 7. So I added more and more features that I was looking for after the initial app. So when I started the application, I built the splash screen, the login, the registration, and forgot UI. I created the authentication code. I separated, I divided the code into different chunks. As you can see, I added the registration section. As you can see, in the code base, I have the backend function, I have the front end, the images, the lib, the main. If you're not familiar with Flutter code, with all your code lives in the lib directory. So I have the backend. I have chosen AppWrite at this time. I was working with AppWrite. So I created the screens portion, so screen section, the authentication, the home, the MS notes, the search functionality, the setting panel, that is going to be the splash screen. I'm going to use the color scheming that I have in mind. So my website is basically in Tokyo Night theme, so I wanted the same theme for my application. So I hard coded the colors here, and then I built some widgets, the text field, the error boxes, the loading states, and then I started building the UI, the forgot screen UI, the login UI, the register UI, and then I started. So once I have my UI was perfectly designed and coded, now it's time to move towards the back end of the application. So here I moved from front end folder to back end application. Now as you can see, I have divided the code into two parts. On the front end of the application and the back end of the application, both need to be separated. Make sure this is important, because if anything you want to change, you do not want them intertwined. If they are intertwined with each other, changing any feature will make your life so much difficult. So if you want to change, if you want to swap up the backend, you can swap up the backend. If you want to change the front end, you can change the front end. Make sure your code is modular. Without this, you're going to see this. I'm going to do this in the future as well. So I built the APIs I built the node structure. For my database, for my local database, I told you I went with Hive. I tried SQLite. I tried a bunch of different local databases, but by far Hive was the best option for me. So I created a model for it. I created a JSON converter for me, so that the data is formed into this particular format, in JSON format. I added some type conversion so that it will properly encode and decode in JSON format. Once I have my all of my models were defined, everything. So at this time, I was deep into AppWrite functionality. So if you go to backend and repos, authentication repos. So this is the authentication gate. So my backend works is something like this. So this is the Android application for me. Let's just name it app UI, and so this is the app UI, and then this is the backend for the application. Let's just name it back and app. So this is the backend application. So what basically is happening, that in this first version of my application, so they are not just directly communicating with each other. They are they are not communicating via like this. So this is basically most of the people things do around here. So how I am doing is that I'm doing this thing a little bit differently. So I'm doing things a little bit different. Let's just, this is the Android app, and this is the backend service. So this is a backend service. So what I'm doing is basically I'm creating another point of view that is known as repo. So what this repo is doing, that the entire UI of the application talk to repo, and the repo again talk to the backend service. So if I want to change or I want to swap this backend service, so for example, my backend is AppWrite, but I want to switch out Firebase. So I can just go and swipe off these components. So I just so that I can move from one backend service to another, from going from AppWrite to Firebase. And this was the thing that I was doing here. So I created an auth gate as usual, but this is the auth repo. Now this is responsible for communicating with the front end and the back end of your application. Now, in some cases, if you have an APIs, different APIs, you have API, you have a folder, and you have an authentication repo. So the front of your application, just like in here in your diagram, your authentication, your Android application will send the API request to your authenticate auth to your repo, and your repo will go back and send to that particular server, and that server will get back response to for example, to that repo, and that repo will display the response in the UI of the application. Now, this approach may seem, oh, it is very difficult and very rough, or it is taking twice the time. But trust me, it is worth it to have that your code modularity and have the flexibility to swipe up parts. This is the beauty of building an Android application or any web application. And this was the case for me when I was trying AppWrite. So the AppWrite basically has a have an issue basically when you were registering, when you were creating different users on different worldwide. It was not registering the user data and not creating them. It was adding user data to that Firebase, to the document, AppWrite document, but it was not creating the authentication, the email and the password or the session token for that user that was being created. So that was the main issue for me. So I switched this back end from AppWrite to Firebase, and all my problem was just gone because AppWrite is so much, because Firebase is so old. It has proper SDKs. It's not good for the current project, but for old projects, it get the job done. So that was my entire lesson from switching from front end, from my switching my back end from AppWrite to basically to Firebase. And as you can see, the pull request. So I change everything. So if you go to pull request, pull request, and you go to closed, I made another. So I made another branch from the V1, and I called it V1 Firebase because I was changing the Firebase application, but I did not want to throw away all that code, all of my work. So this is one key more important thing. You need to work in branches. So voila, I made the same commit. I added the initial, I add the authentication, I add the forget password, there was a small bug, I add the internet checker, I add the APIs for lecturing my. So what does this code look like? Let's just see all of these things that I changed. So as you are looking in this code base, you can see my backend is completely different from the front end of the application. So let's just check out this code base. Here are the SVGs, and there you go. So yeah, I divided my entire code base from separate backend into separate file. Now since I added Firebase, so there need to be some config files. So in order to having your particular URLs and the endpoint for that, for Firebase, I just added these empty blocks so that anybody can add their own Firebase and just substitute the component. So since they are a model for everything. Now if you go to backend application, I created APIs for getting all of the nodes. Now this is what this API is doing, that it's using HTTP. It is hitting at a particular endpoint, which is rafa99.com/ms-nodes, and then it is getting all that nodes and saving it to Hive database and rendering the HTML content. So I created particularly model for each of these operations. So as you can see, there is model for node taking model, there is model for creating users, there is model for creating everything. So as you can see, some of the code from AppWrite went straight to the Firebase as well. So I added provider, that the job of the provider was to manage different states, and if I want to call a particular function by checking the internet, you will see that was the thing. I also created a theme provider so that a user can switch between different themes as well. I added the auth gate features. Now I changed, since I was not using the AppWrite, I need to change this auth gate. Before I believe in the initial version um, there was no auth gate because they were just it will display logged completely. But in this version I completely rewrite the authentication gate. So what this doing, let's just read the code first. It is using the stream builder. It is checking the state, it is checking the stream from the auth repo. Now this auth repo, auth repo is the main corporate, and this is the backend, the Firebase. It is responsible for communicating with this. So Android application is sending this here, asking the auth repo and streaming the change. Is there any change? Is the user is logged in? Is the user is not logged in? Is the user having a session token or not? Once that is confirmed, it will say the session is active. The user data has a snapshot. I will redirect to Snapchat. But before I do that, I need to verify that is the email that users have been logged in. Is it a valid email or a wrong email? Sometimes a user can create a script and it will send a thousands of requests on your website and it will block down and shut down all of this. This is known as DDoS attack. So you need to create a verified email system. So every time a user create a new account, you need to check is the email really legitimate or not. If it's not, after 15 days, after 10 days, you just delete that email. It is no use to you. But if it is a real email, it will confirm the email. If the email is set and the user is logged in, user has a session, it will redirect to home. But if it's not, then it will go back to the login screen. So now this is the entire auth repo. Now there is a function for login, there is a function for registering all the users, and it is using the user model that I created above. So if you want to try out this code base, all you need to do is just create a Firebase project, plop all those API keys in the config file, and you run the application. It will sync everything. It will use those particular models to create that particular data store model. It will create the syncing nodes and everything that you needed. So you don't need to create and you don't need to have these features. Once you, and then there is a function for logout, then there is the function for checking if the user is logged in, what is the current session, and there is the function for resetting your emails, resetting your password, checking you're verified or not, and all of those functions that are required all are over here. So once I have all of this function, now I have the authentic authgate, auth repo, contact repo, all of these functionality that required some kind of authentication or need to communicate with the backend of the service. They were all in all of backend folder. There is also the service folder that was using the connective package to check the internet connection or not. So all of this communication is done via the front end of the application, and it works. It was for the first version of the application. It works very well. So the first features, uh, the feature that was finalized in the version one of the application was having a splash screen, register user, forget the password, setting panel, delete account, user can log in, app info section, home screen where user can read their own notes from my website. A user can search their own notes. There was a tagging system, there was a danger screen, forget password, and all of those. And where these front end UI features for the backend application, fetching these API nodes, there was the CMS system for the administration system, and all of these features were added. And that is the entire process how things are laid. But in the near future, this was all done in 1 week. But in version 2, I have a thought process that I also need to take some note, and that is where the second hell of the blog post begin. So in version 2 of the application, that was, I believe that would be the pull request number 3, if I'm not mistaken. So in this application, in this particular version of the application, now at this point version, if you have finalized all of your features, it is well and good. But for me, I want note taking application experience as well. And that was not included in version 1. That was the feature that I really needed. So I start working on that feature. So what I did in pull request number 3, I've streamlined the setting panel. I added the create node widget. So let's just hop into the code base because I changed a lot of things from creating my own database to everything. So let's just hop into the code base. Let's just close these changes because these are a couple of assets folders and all of this. So instead of going to buy, since this was the first, I was doing a lot of cleanup and a lot of note taking of the section of the application. I decided to, revamp a couple of things, and especially I believe this was the version that I changed the file structure. But as you can see, this structure is very different from the last version of the application. This is the version that I changed the entire folder structure of the application, from moving from front end and back end application to changing the back end name from back end to core. And from my front end, I changed the front end to features, because there are going to be the front end application, I named it uh, so I named the front end of the application name features. I was calling that features, and the back end, the repos, they were all there, and I was calling the back end the core. So I just changed the names of them and moved things around to make things much more readable and much more cohesive enough. So all of those things, all of those backends remain the same, but the main thing that was adding was note taking. So I created a new model for particularly taking notes. So if I want to have a structured data as well. So for creating a note, I created a model. So there's going to be a note ID, there's going to be the content, there's going to be the title, and there's going to be these 4 to 5 helper functions. So I wanted a sync layer that can, sync your local database nodes to the cloud service of the node. So when a user create a simple node in the UI of the application, let's just start from the beginning. So here is the note taking UI. What this UI does is, when you hit the save button, it will use that model that I have shown you guys before. It will save it to Hive database. It will save to Hive database. Now this is completely local, and this is what I wanted. I wanted for privacy reasons. But what if user logged out? All his data would be gone because it is stored on local devices. Now that's a big issue. So I wanted to make a sync layer. So what I did, I just built a new layer. So I called this a new layer called sync layer. Note taking. So what this does is, when you, after some particular time, it will call this function, this layer, and what this layer do, it will check, does this note has been updated or not. If it is updated, it will send that note. Let's just move it over here. It will send that note to the database, which is, for my case, that was Firebase. So once that note is saved on Firebase, then it's simple. I just need to do a reverse function. So once the user is logged into another account or another device, it will, the note taking UI will say, oh, it's empty, and it will reverse the sync layer. It will ask the Firebase, and Sinclair say, okay, there are nothing in the local database, so I'm going to ask Firebase, and then Firebase will say, oh, here are all of the nodes. And since all the nodes are in JSON format, it's really easy for me to decode those JSON layer and make sure to display all the nodes here in the UI. So that was the entire flow for me. So asking, saving the nodes and syncing everything to the backend, to the Firebase, and that's how things are. And as you can see here, they are there. This is the model. This was the way it was encoding, and this was the repo that I created. So I created 2 repos, basically a Hive operation where all the operations for the Hive database are going to perform, and the note taking action where all the operations for this sync layer came in. This sync layer, this. And this one as well, because this is the note taking action and this is the sync layer. So both of them are responsible for communicating the front and back end. So if I need to add anything, or I say I want to add a third database, maybe in the near future I want to add some new features, so it is really easy for me to pop this and just make the connection, a call, make the connection here, and then maybe reverse it here, or direct, I want to communicate directly to the Firebase. So as you can see, adding new components and making this makes easy for development perspective point, and from a user point as well, if they want to tinker around, especially when you're developing an Android or iOS or any cross-platform application. Code modularity is the key number thing. So once I have the code, once the all of those application was written, the sync layer was written. As you can see in my sync nodes, I have been working. I have commented out, non-commented out. It was a real buggy mess for me because this was the very first sync layer that I built. But it seemed to work. I also divided the services, internet services, into two parts. There was the checker and there was the helper. Now before this, there was the huge file that was checking the internet and making sure that it will go from one point, but you need to make sure that your performance does not lag. User feels the most smoothest experience. So that was the one thing. So I, as you can see, most of my UI is from expect from folder changing. This is not changing that much. It is making sure that my UI remain the same. My the backend and application shows some routes change because I was restructuring the whole application from front end to screens to code to repo and from features to authentication. So I was dividing the each function into its own functionality. So for example, there's a splash screen, so there's going to feature, and then there's going to be a flash screen or splash screen. So there's going to feature for offline mode, there's going to feature for the setting panel, there's a feature for note taking, for note reading. So I divided the UI into features wise. This made things a little more easier instead of having the screens in this side and having the code repo on that side and just chuckling around. So I did this code structure a while ago from someone, and it really helped. I want the UI keep inspired by. I show you the UI at the end. So this was the wrapping up, and this was the version 1 and version 2 application. Now as I move forward with the different versions, now let's check out the version 3 and 4 of the application. Once your features are finalized, you might not need it. So version 3 was adding some here and there improvement. So I increased the speed of the note taking. I fixed a lot of bugs. I added a recycle feature. I added highlight. I added pin support because there are particular notes you want to pin on top. So these were the few here and there features that I wanted in the application, and I added it. Initially, I was just fixing bugs in version 2.1, but I renamed it to version 3 because I can see I was changing a lot of UI components. So that was the major thing. So let's just, and that was the entire application process for me. So if you want to try out the application, first of all, it's all free. It's all hosted on GitHub, as you can see. I showed you all of the code that was hosted on GitHub. I'm not hiding anything. All the code is basically on there. But if you want to try the application, you can click this link in the description as well. You can download the directly APK from my website because I'm hosting all of my APKs on my website as well. You can see all of the codes, and that is pretty much how applications are built. But before I give my final thoughts, let's just check out the application first. So I'm going to pop up, I'm going to start my Android emulator, and I'm going to show you how things actually look like. So I started the emulator and I pop up the Android application for this for the version 1 and version 2 and version 3, and I believe this is the up to version 7, so there might be some changes. So as you can see, I can search through all of those nodes. I added tags, different things. I created. There might be some a little bit lag here because I'm using an Android emulator, but to be honest, on native Android device or iOS devices, it's working like a champ. So a user can create its own title. There is the there is a save feature, and there are in the coming versions, in version 5 and version 6, I added the AI summary, and there's the auto save functionality as well. User can create its own note. User can title and auth, and then it will save its own note. But if it doesn't, it does not save, create a note as well. And there's the setting panel. This was the color option that I was talking about, from purple to sunshine to green forest to blue, but my favorite has to be Tokyo Night. User can log out, then change its password. User can, now this was introduced in version, I believe version 6 it was, choosing its AI model for different summaries, autosave feature. I believe it was version 6 or 5. There was an option to sync their notes manually. If the auto update feature does not work, user can delete its account. It I in the version in version 6, I believe I added the auto update feature. So my Android app unfortunately is not on Google Play Store. So I give the user choice to, stick on main branch or beta version, download the APK from my website roughly99.com, link in the description. It will download the app, it will close this app, it will install the new SDK APK file, and it will update the application for you. So you don't have to go and manually do that. Now, if you're an admin, then you will see this option. If you're not, you won't see this option as well. And that was the entire UI of the application. Now, if you're wondering how this application read and write, as you can see, it's working like a charm. Now, in the initial version, there were some issues with this HTML rendering, but in version 7 I fixed that as well. All of the semicolon, the table, the formatting, the emojis, I changed all of that. I added support for them, and they're working like a charm now, I believe. Yeah, look at the table. Like, how is that possible for an Android app now? But it is possible, you can do it now. But for the conclusion, for me, stop wondering and start building. You're an engineer, have fun while building the app. These things might frustrate you in the beginning, but to be honest, that's what makes you good. Finding challenges and solving these will make you good. You will have fun. You will get bored. So after your day job, you might want to figure out something cool to do. And this was the idea for me. So I was at a stage what to do, what to build. But when I started building, it was so much fun. Like going from designing everything to flow. I'm a tech nerd guy. I need to try out this. And then writing this entire blog post, making this video, this was all a fun process for me. So try it out, follow these process, give these guidelines that I have provided, make your code modular, make it fun, make good choices, make bad choices, learn from them, and then in the near future have fun. That's all you need. Identify a problem, fix the feature you're looking for, and then deploy the application. So that is pretty much it from my side. I know this is a long video. I did not expect it to be this long. I went way too much in detail. But let's see how things roll out. And until then, peace out.